Hello everyone, this is JamieStarr with the New World News Network. This is our second podcast. I did on the channel though count the last two interviews or a combination of two other things as the second one maybe. So we'll call this number 3, but we're going through the stuff I pulled for the second one because I haven't done that yet. We'll probably just fly through it all relatively quickly because at this rate the news comes so fast and there's so much going on that stuff that's like a week old is quite far behind us. But when you're dealing with overarching principles like Marxism, or this divide and conquer type strategy, you know, you can still point stuff as evidence of things. First thing I'm going to bring up is a tweet that was sent to me. And the funny thing about these like social justice liberals who buy into this whole divide and conquer thing is because they're taught they're racist from, like, you know, because you have these subconscious biases or whatever. I think they don't realize sometimes what they're saying and that it pretty much actually is racist. I mean, this is like ultimate cuck level stuff to the point where you almost feel like it's underhanded and ironic. Like, if you were to be a really smart racist and try to, like, do stuff that's so below the belt that they don't even know they're being hit, this is it. And I'm sure this guy is very well-intentioned. But, I mean, see, it says, Christopher and Julie would like to have a moment of silence for all those suffering the world has seen this summer. We think of those friends in this time who suffer daily at the hands of oppression and systemic injustice, as well as those who bear the brunt of the backlash. Who bears the brunt of the backlash? White people and cops. They're the ones being protested. So we ask you to bear in mind, as well as those who bear the brunt of the backlash. I mean, he's saying, you know, there are these people who suffer, but also keep in mind the white people who get blamed for this stuff that in actuality is individual circumstances happening in different locations that the media is trying to connect together through an overarching narrative of police violence and African Americans being dealt with within a tribal context. I mean, realistically, these are individual circumstances involving individuals when you remove the ideologies from things that they're trying to instill into these narratives. Christopher and Julie pledged to commit their union to creating a more just and loving world. So sweet. Moment of silence. Now we invite you to leave behind the worries and concerns of everyday life. So everything we just, you know, had to bring up into our wedding because we feel so compelled about this stuff. Just put it behind you and be present now and celebrate the joy of their marriage. And this is the crazy thing where, like I said, by doing this, I feel like it's so snobby in a way that it's like sarcastic and almost fake, but people are co-signing it and retweeting it. And it's like, when I say that some of the fear about it, you know, there's rational fears, irrational fears. When we remove the race narrative out of this whole story, it's like, okay, your odds of being shot by a cop are far less than being shot or being stung by a bee, falling in a bathtub, getting into a car accident, having cancer of some sort. But we are told to prioritize one so far over the other, where everything else is just like, yeah, well, that gets a rally, well, that gets this, like, and it gets pushed to the most crazy of limits, where we have this, which is a, hold on, radical intersectional feminist website that I heard Paul Joseph Watson reference And honestly, I mean, he makes it into like a joke, but if you actually go and read it, let's start with this. Because the guy who sent that tweet, I mean, he would be one of the white guys at a Black Lives Matter protest. Unless your black organizers have specified that you need to come to a rally for buffers against the police. See, you're just a shield to them. Like, white people want to advocate this stuff. The most radical in this group would think of you as nothing more than a shield for them clashing against the police. As a legal observer, or to collect other white people, collect them for what? To remove them and tell them they're not invited? And we saw this at the DNC recently, where the organizers of Black Lives Matter were telling white people, including the press, to the back of the line. Like we discussed in the prior podcast, part of this is because it's a decentralized group. Another one of my theories is it's a COINTEL group. Why are you going to a protest when you're the oppressor? Yes, you high school, college age, straight white male, you're oppressing someone by your very existence. I mean, this is as radical as things can obviously get. And we can see from the other articles on the side, bittersweet like me, when the lemonade ain't made for fat black women and femmes. And it's all about how this one large, angry woman if she doesn't see herself represented, if there's not a fat black woman who's an angry lesbian portrayed in the media or in someone's project, if she's not represented, if she doesn't see herself everywhere, it's this crazy level of narcissism, then we're gonna have a problem. In the last 2 years that I've organized around anti-black violence within the Black Lives Matter movement, I've witnessed white people showing up more and more to protests and rallies. At first, when we were protesting for Mike Brown for months in 2014, personally, I was a lot more open to welcoming white allies who want allies. See, they're in a battle. Look at their language. Wanted to come out and help us fight. My personal political naivete and the need for more bodies trumpeted questioning their motives in the heat of the moment of something so important. But after a while, I started realizing that trying to work with white people in a direct actions became extremely triggering and tasking. I witnessed many white people show up and want to be in the front, not to protect us, but to be visible and be in a photo. There would be swarms of white anarchists showing up chanting "fuck the police," completely disrupting our original chants and heightening the potential for violence against black protesters. Easily, though, the anarchists almost outdo the groups of All Lives Matter folks who came out to walk and protest but missed the entire point, even when most black people call them out. See, it's just about them. No one else. Everyone else, enemy, ally, whatever. Then there's white folks that show up ready to antagonize us and insert their opinion about how black people are navigating their pain and oppression. From "we all need to love each other" and "this is a class issue" and "no more violence," insert MLK quote. See, Martin Luther King's ideology to be mocked. And with that, you know, MLK was a reverend, was a Christian, so you know his ideology is based on a Bible ideology. It's almost a refuting of that. To many black folks at these rallies, though, we are openly and publicly grieving. Our protests and rebellions are out of channeling our trauma into action as a form of healing strategy and moving through pain. We are marching, yelling, singing, physically and mentally exhausted because white people are killing us. This isn't even cops are killing us. This is white people are killing us. And if you look at these crimes, it's very low numbers. I mean, white male on black female rape is practically non-existent. So when I see white people show up to rally, excited and smiling, ready to march like it's a hobby, I'm disgusted and absolutely fucking livid. When I witness white people taking up space, pushing myths of whiteness as political truth, or using white saviorism to reframe their power and privilege, I'm ready to fight. The fact that white people show up to these rallies like if it's a fucking barbecue, because y'all know y'all don't have cookouts, chanting Asada's words, saying we have nothing to lose but our chains. I'm actually re-traumatized by how comfortable white people are not doing anything to change their violence. What violence? Do you have an assault charge, honey? Like, where is this happening? There's great background music for this because this woman's head is like a circus. I'm so good at what I do, producing, but I have to save the world with you guys. These marches are funerals for us. Black people are being murdered, violated, and oppressed every day. We are literally in mourning every minute of our lives. This woman needs a therapist. This is mentally unhealthy. And it goes into these reasons. Ask yourself why you need to go to a Black Lives Matter protest. Reparations. Nothing you have is yours. Let me be clear. Nothing you have is yours. Also, let me be see-through. Reparations are not donations because we are not your charity, tax write-off, or good deed for the day. You are living off stolen resources, stolen land, exploited labor, appropriated culture, and the murder of our people. Nothing you have is yours. Reparations for us is not only necessary, I mean, this goes through, and in either this article or the other article, it goes through and lists off everything. We need housing, transportation, food, clothes, free space for meetings and workspace. We need laptops, cell phones, encrypted systems for communication, solar power, and land. Stop playing. Y'all really thought pulling up to the protest in your Hyundai was going to be enough? Nah, you have to give us everything we need and more, because even if it means you go without it, it doesn't mean because how we've been living for 400 plus years. Reparations will be negotiable, so if you're not willing to talk money, you are not here for Black Lives Matter as a movement or for us as individuals. Intentional acts of disruption and shifting structural power. Number 1. I mean, there's one thing in here where she talks about how she's owed Beyonce tickets. It might be this one. My dilemma. I hate white supremacy, but do I really hate white people? And it basically goes through how she has a hard time humanizing these people, obviously from her other work. How she dated white men and felt as if they were fetishizing her because she is an obese black woman. And basically going how she has decided to not invest in white people around her. I mean, it's basically her just, I often wonder how this balance works for others. I think about how difficult it must be becoming more conscious about your blackness after already investing in a relationship with a white person. I think how emotionally taxing it must be to have a white parent to hold space for their guardianship and love while also critiquing their privilege, power, and ability to affirm and protect you, or the difficulty of holding space for white people in our intersecting communities. Like, what the, how mindfucked do you have to be? Some questions that arise for me are, is it possible for a white person to truly love me or to see my humanity? How can a white person hold my trauma while benefiting from a system that affirms the violence against me? What are oh my god, who thinks in these ways? This is a level of mind control that she is using to try to interpret her life through, and she needs to just live her life. She needs to just go with it. Is it possible to trust desire from a white person you love while also divesting from white beauty standards and white affirmations? All of this is projecting her insecurities against the world. Can social programming of white supremacy ever be undone enough for white people to see the depths of violence against our bodies? Can the social program, can a white person's sacrifices to dismantle white supremacy ever be great enough to trust them? Does love conquer all if it's often shaped through violence within white supremacist context? If black people are still unlearning anti-blackness while simultaneously surviving anti-black violence, how is it possible to expect a white person to be conscious of this violence enough to love us fully? If my ability to humanize white people, see, she's at the point where she has to actively try to humanize someone. What a horrible state of mind to have. Humanize white people, something I should expect from other black people living and surviving different trauma and experiences. How can I decipher between humanizing white people as spiritual wellness from investment in whiteness? Why do you see this social construct is different than people. I mean, this is the problem, because you are proactively seeking to live in a world that requires a certain level of cognitive dissonance. You need to convince yourself that a theory is reality, and when you will have problems living your life when you try to base your reality on theories. So, here in entertainment news, we have an article about how the female Black Iron Man, which I have issues with that. This mind-warping thing with the genders, female man, the Black female Iron Man has been around for 5 seconds, and she's already being whitewashed. And it's basically, E-Weekly, Entertainment Weekly, took a poll, and meritocracy kicked in, and people were like, okay, I'm just going to pick my favorite Black actresses, who we think are most qualified for the job, meritocracy. And of course people have an article with it, because Black isn't Black enough. It's obvious who has the race problem. If you're holding different levels of standards to people over, you know, not who's most qualified to the role. I mean, they complain about the use of makeup in Hollywood. Everyone wears makeup. Again, it should be the best person, most qualified. But the issue is, how dark is their skin really? So, if you haven't heard, Milo Yiannopoulos got banned from Twitter. And one of the things he had been posting about before getting banned from Twitter, I'm surprised he didn't get banned from Facebook first, was he's been exposing their trending editors and basically showing that they're all very heavily politically biased. Facebook trending editor Ben Wagner, what is an extremist exactly? How liberal is Facebook? The company is facing 2 lawsuits owing to its well-documented bias against conservatives, and on one hand, and its alleged softness to Palestinian terrorists on the others. Goes through, points out all the typical liberal hypocrisies are being enforced. They banned him on Twitter. Facebook is falling apart. I saw there's a channel I subscribe to on here, Computing Forever, and he said that there is a group of YouTubers that are all going to try hopping behind a new platform. They haven't said what platform it is yet, but I assume if you watch my channel, you probably watch all of theirs as well. So everyone needs to really make a shift towards it, so that it actually works and it doesn't become a ghost land. I know there's debate going on about, is it one of the decentralized blockchain communities? That's not been addressed yet, but I was sent articles about them, so I'm trying to find someone to interview though that knows a decent amount of blockchaining, because I really don't know anything about it. And I know that it's being used in multiple ways, like to copyright photographs, build social networks, obviously Bitcoin and different currencies. So definitely something to look in, and decentralized is always good. You know, you never want power all in the hands of one group, and that's the thing. Like the Pirate Bay founder said, Facebook is its own nation and Mark Zuckerberg is the dictator. You have this. Milo also found Jennifer Jenkins, another one of these crazy, radical Black chicks who race isn't real. Race isn't real, and then advocates all this stay woke. Jenkins is one of the more radical members of Facebook's trending news team, who once shared a Vox article about the science of race, along with the blunt, loopy message, race isn't real. Jenkins is also an admirer of Ta-Nehisi Coates, whose articles she shares frequently. In April, shared a Coates article about the Baltimore riots, which denounced nonviolence as a con and compliance with oppressors. Here it shows the article. She also shared an article condemning the Confederate flag as a symbol of racism, denouncing counter-arguments against cultural heritage as bullshit cop-out. So you see the mindset of hers. It's obviously stuck on radical black feminist thoughts and taking that sort of standpoint. So we have this guy who's presumably gay saying what exactly is extremism when it comes to Palestinians, all these crazy pro-leftist endorsing radical Islam stuff, class war, race war stuff. That's all cool. That's all going to be out there, and if you try to speak truth to any of that stuff, you are liable for censorship. I've done a bit of trolling on Twitter this week because I do feel like since Milo's gone, people should sort of up it, but they should be tasteful in how they do up it. I've noticed I've been doing a lot of the same things as Mark Dice, actually. There was a trending Black Women Did That hashtag, and I decided to kill a couple birds with one stone and tweeted something about it's sad seeing all of these successful black inventors, scientists, and respectable women juxtaposed to trash like Beyonce and Rihanna. And it's, you know, both of them, I just think there's a level of overt sexualization in the music that isn't necessary. You know, it's not, they don't make music that I think is kid-friendly, basically. I think you can make adult music and make it classy and make it so it's not offensive to kids. I mean, I work in a restaurant where all we play is music from like the 50s, the 60s, Motown, doo-wop, you know, all that stuff, Elvis, and there weren't songs that you had to be like, oh, I can't let my kid hear the Temptations. They got this song that's about, you know, cigars on ice and sucking dick with ice cubes in your mouth. Oh no, pussy poppin'. Like, so when I call them trash, it's for obvious reasons, and of course I triggered the whole beehive and had them coming at me and ended up blocked by a couple of them. I even had this one Muslim girl try to say I was a sexist and misogynist for, you know, having issues with twerking and stuff. And I asked her, is twerking part of your culture? Like, is it Sharia approved? Of course I got blocked. I got blocked in like by 6 people just because of that tweet. But it's just, you know, light jabs, that's all. I mean, another thing I posted with the Black Women Did That is some years aborted more kids than they birthed, and that's something I find troubling. The abortion statistics for the black community are ridiculous. I've heard people say that the most dangerous place for a black baby is in the womb. The King family has actually continued on with that fight. His niece is a very big pro-life advocate, so it's a shame that more people don't take up that fight, one that affects far more people than people being shot by cops. I had this article pulled, and this is kind of nothing considering the full DNC hack. We had DNC hacker reveals DNC donor info, political strategy, and this one was about Guccifer 2.0, and he's supposedly Romanian, which is what I think. I almost wonder if he was in part responsible for the WikiLeaks hack, but now all you hear them talking about is Russian hackers. So there's a narrative being pushed, and it's being pushed so much that it has to be like spoken back against. But if Guccifer 2.0 was already credited with a bunch of DNC breaches, why are we not blaming him when I feel like he's probably most likely the one who did some of them? But you never know. Let's see, what was this article? Sex offender shot by police. Oh, I think I pulled this because one of the guys in these latest Black Lives Matter killings, the Anton Sterling or something like that, you know, shot sex offender. This stuff happens, and there's no... Dallas police shot and killed a wanted sex offender Tuesday in North Oak Cliff, saying he pulled out a handgun as they moved in to arrest him. And this is because I was looking up, you know, in the same word. Here's the thing, I think 2 guys got shot in 1 week. One was a sex offender, and another one was in Texas. They may have been separate ones. And I was looking up sex offender shootings in Texas, and I came across this one, and I think they ended up being different cities, but I was just like, you know, a sex offender gets shot. And why, I mean, you have someone who's having, like, a grown man having sex with a child, and we're going to mourn this person in a national manner because we are just so at a loss with them not being here? No, they were an awful person. Like, tragic shit happens, but come on, guys, let's pick and choose the ones we want to hold up. If this is a battle, and you know they're calling people in this their martyrs and stuff, let's go with someone who's at least got an alright looking background. I can stand some petty drug offenses and stuff, but when you're talking about sex with kids, come on. Lena Dunham, professional moron. Sushi is cultural appropriation. At her old school, Oberlin, the girl's creator said she agreed with students at her old college protest against the use of Japanese and Vietnamese cuisine in their dining halls. This is how far this goes. We're talking the Dave Chappelle skit of the racial draft, and things are being, you know, if this stuff is implemented, because here's the thing about the ideology, keep this in mind. They allow for cultural appropriation amongst other groups, because that's assimilation or something. Again, it's all this semantical mumbo-jumbo, but a black person can eat tacos because they don't have systemic and institutional power. They're a minority. So, what this means is if all the other minorities can eat all the other minorities' foods, you're basically saying no whites. It's a push to reinstitutionalize segregation to white people done in this whole inverted manner, where it's just being sold in a reverse sort of mindfuck of a way, where because of something that happened in the past, now these people can't have a fucking California roll or something. I battle every day with trying to understand how liberals hold their positions of thought and how I can deprogram them, and it's the most mind-boggling things, because they just take these positions of such hatred and such anger and anti-growth and prosperity, and it's like, how did you even get here? How did you even get this fucked up? And it's almost like they grasp it in a way, because they'll be like, oh, well, it's institutionalized, it's our schools, it's our media, it's our this. And then what they describe is contrary to reality, because they're not speaking what they see, they're speaking what they're told. They're essentially a kid that keeps being downloaded with them. Oh, why do you think the world is an angry, racist, unfair place? Because you've been taught that. You probably haven't experienced that. Not many people have. But you're taught to interpret certain things as that, or even, you know, that's where the whole microaggressions thing comes in. There's not enough real racism, so now we need to go at the subconscious racism. The ridiculous, if you cross the street, you're racist. If you don't cross the street, you're racist. If you look up, you're racist. If you look down, you're racist. If you nod your head, you're racist. If you say, how's it going in passing, you're racist. Like, you can't say anything. You just need to acknowledge it, but not acknowledge out loud. Like, it's this, you know, if you don't do this, I will interpret it as this. It's the most, who wants to live like this? There's a freeing of the mental chains that needs to happen to these poor people. Here's something I saw, because, let me bring up the other article first. Neil deGrasse Tyson, professional moron and propagandist. Also, you like the beat? This beat's cool too. I'm gonna put all these tracks out. The instrumentals, it's gonna be called Archives, because they're all old beats I was working on. This one is my Poverty and Beaches sound. Sounds like, you know, you would see little Hispanic kids playing soccer on a beach somewhere with neon lights in the back. Anyway, Neil deGrasse Tyson shares stories of a dozen racial profiling incidents from his past. And it was like, there's one time that I was stopped late at night in an underpass on an empty road in New Jersey for having changed lanes without signaling. So he acknowledges he did something wrong. He, the cop, went on to say the real reason why he stopped me was because my car's license plates were much newer and shinier than the 17-year-old Ford that I was driving. The officer was just making sure that neither the car nor the plates were stolen. So, he gives you an explanation outside of race. You admit you did nothing wrong. You admit the plates are way newer than... I mean, this is how ridiculous it is, because you're taught to interpret everything as race. You can have a situation that in itself explains itself. This guy can be this mind-blowing astrophysicist genius guy, and he can't even understand that when he's asked about incidents of racial profiling, he can't even show any. He can show a incident where a cop profiled a car based on the fact that the plates were much older, or the plates were much newer than the car, and wanted to make sure it wasn't stolen. Plain and simple. Tyson also described being stopped several times while trying to bring boxes of textbooks into his graduate school office. I wonder how often that scenario shows up in police training tapes, he says. In total, I was stopped 2 or 3 times by security officers while entering physics buildings, but I was never stopped entering the campus gym. When Tyson and his colleagues looked back on the incidents, they conclude the only unifying factor of all those telling the stories were black. They were guilty of not DWI, but other violations none of us knew were on the books. Driving while black, walking while black, and of course just being black, he said. Shortly after the conference, the Rodney King riots, and this is the other thing, they attach these things in a way where it's like, what does Neil deGrasse Tyson have to do with, getting pulled over in this car have to do with Rodney King? And Neil deGrasse Tyson has got himself added to the Defense Innovation Board, which basically I assume he's going to be a propagandist, because I don't know of any of his big groundbreaking theories of anything. He's a TV star, he's in movies, he's an actor, but he's on the list. And you see other people on the list, Eric Schmidt, you have all sorts of people from Google, Greylock Partners, Amazon. So it's also all sorts of big, huge companies for defense innovation. This is military stuff they're going in on. Let's see. Henry Rollins decided to chime in on the race issue, and this guy, I don't know what the big deal about him is. He's such a tool, and even all of the roles I've seen him in, it's not very. But for some reason, he is like this go-to veteran, I don't know, punk guy or something. Henry Rollins. White America couldn't handle what black Americans deal with every day. And this is another one of these where he just sort of grasps at straws, pulls something from over here, over there, over there. This is this amazing article. Things are bad, but I would posit they have been this way for as far back into American history as you want to go. See, nothing's improved. What has changed is the amount of information available to the average citizen. Thanks to cell phones and people employing social networking to spread news quickly, what goes on minute to minute has crossed the line into overload. Well, that is true on a handful of ways, but again, to acknowledge something like that and then say nothing has changed, just our knowledge of it, no, all violent crimes have been declining for quite some time. When I really started to understand the two Americas was in the 3rd grade. On the last day of school, we were all told if we had passed or failed for the year. There were several kids older than me in my class. They had already been held back, and they were getting older as their education stagnated. When some of these kids were told they hadn't passed, the expression on their faces didn't change. The if you don't pass, you don't pass. I mean, this is why there's a great Stefan Molyneux video this week about leftists and getting into colleges, and there's a teacher talking about how these people have like a middle school age level of reading, and because Obamacare goes to 27, you have kids not taking a full course load because they can't handle it and being in school till 27. There's an infantilizing and a coddling of the mind that is going on an extreme level, and it's now something you can point to from numerous angles, and you can't deny it when it's at this level. Early that year in the play area one day, kids had lined up for free bag lunches that were handed out. There were more kids than lunches. One kid put a pencil through the palm of a kid who got the last one. We all stood there and watched as he screamed. What does this have to do with racism? There weren't enough sandwiches, and the kid was such a prick that he stabbed someone through the hand before all of you could cut off a quarter of your sandwich and share it with him. I guess communism and socialism really don't work, Henry, huh? It was this year that I understood that my life in America was going to be different, not only because of the color of my skin, but because of the advantages that came with it. Neither of those two incidents had to do with your skin color. I learned another lesson many years later. He goes through and tells this story about how Ice-T has to wear a chain around his neck so that white people in restaurants know that he can pay the bill. Let's see. I'm an educated, Caucasian, heterosexual male. Does this ensure that I have success and live the American dream? Obviously it doesn't, but it damn sure drops me on second base with great opportunity to steal third. What is he talking about? What are you, this head start in the race to where? I mean, it makes no sense, and it's all this metaphors and fuzzy talk, and there's no substance behind this. It's all just emotional manipulating and playing on people's imaginations. I live solidly in one of the Americas, but have been aware of the other for decades. For the last week, I've heard politicians use the phrase that nauseates me whenever I hear anyone say it. The need to come together. To say that, you first, motherfucker. Since an upgrade will not occur on national level via presidential pen stroke or Secretary of the United States decision, you have to take it upon yourself to be an infinitely fantastic person every single day. There will be times when it will be a bitch to be so awesome, but you'll handle it. This century will be about incredible individuals, bold acts of kindness, and a genuine desire to at least try to see things differently from someone else's perspective. But two of the mandatory requirements for betterment moving forward. Don't wait for your government. That I agree with. It's a broken machine that can only deliver damaged goods, prejudice quotes the mechanics of the USA's OS. Attempts to clean the parts are attacked as big government. What? See, this is now what are you advocating? You had me for a second, and now you're going off the rails. How about no government? You can't say the government's broke and then defend big government. Special interest meddling, it's by no means a Gordian knot, but a total system retool is required. It would be incredibly expensive and time-consuming, and the growing pains would be enormous. Not going to happen. Equality, tolerance, and decency are not inherently American or human traits. What? Yes, they are. Actually. I don't know how this person doesn't see this. You're in a band. Don't all band members come together to make music with the realistic expectation you might not make money out of it? You're just coming together and working as a team because you enjoy it? The values you choose to adopt and use or not, so they'll be amazing all the time. What nonsense. You like this beat? From now on, I'm only making the music I'm good at, which is pretty songs. So, I found this nifty article about Swedish teens who use home-built pickup trucks to drive without a license. In the same way, there's tiny house stuff, and hopefully I'll get to doing a video on all sorts of this alternative stuff. If you lower the speed of one of these like Volvos or other trucks they've modified into that of a tractor and make it so it tops out at like 40 miles an hour, maybe even 25 miles an hour, you can just drive, top out at 20 miles an hour, you can drive it on the road without a license. And teens are doing this in Sweden. And this is the thing, there's always ways around rules and everything like that. You really should just, you know, lessen them, because rules that are man-made, you know, I made a post about this online. It boggles my mind in the truth communities and the rational thinkers and the atheists who think they're oh so smart. When you have all this data that religious communities have far less crime, are far more productive, when you have traditional nuclear family and, you know, traditional gender roles and the conservative Judeo-Christian Western prerequisite to base everything from, everything is better. And you don't need all of these laws because you're living under God's laws instead of man's laws. Man cannot govern another man. This is why on the internet, no matter what program they put out, someone will be able to crack it. It's why there's always a black market. It is why it is, and there are ways to lessen it and make it less of a problematic scenario. And one of the ways to do that, the easiest way to do that, would be to return to a religious society instead of a society based on government and man trying to rule over man. What God, we can let that be up to whoever. We can debate it. I think some are better than others, but there are some I also don't have a problem with. Barbie's got a new body, and now Mattel is tackling her other big image problem. And this, you know, if you really start to see all this stuff between the radical black feminists and this about, you know, Barbie and she's not fat enough and she's not tan enough or Latino enough, or she is a, you know, isn't a scientist and she's just a material girl. And I mean, granted, I don't think materialism is a good thing, but this is the level where it is social engineering, and now we're admitting we're doing it, and we're doing it in ways that are just opposite of human nature. And the fact that they think, you know, that this is going to reinvigorate Barbie, maybe. I mean, part of the reason they, if you look at the DNC emails, I mean, there's their whole thing about Hispanics being the next big voter base compared to the baby boomers, and that they're brand loyal, so they have to import them and market to them. I don't know. But if you look at stock things, you know, when people do this diversity shit, it backfires on them. Ghostbusters was proof enough of that. Elon Musk pedestal is crumbling as Tesla was having all sorts of accidents with self-driving cars. The projections aren't matching what they're supposed to be. So I don't think Musk also bought Solar Corp City and is their largest shareholder. Tesla plunged. So things are not looking well in that department, which is a shame. And it's also a shame that despite this Tesla company trying to push forward on certain innovations, I don't really see them much honoring Tesla's vision or doing much of his products. It's sort of just become this brand name where you're only allowed to have like surface level knowledge and stuff. So don't remember why exactly I brought that one up, if there was a bigger point. Here's an article. Half of all food in the U.S. is thrown out. I covered a lot of this food issue stuff in my video on how fascism actually does exist in the U.S. And it's basically how the food stamp system is set up. You have certain food things that have subsidies created for them, the corn market. Then you have the supermarket, which only has 8, mega companies putting out everything. Corn is in like 70% of your products. If they give the American people food stamps that only work in the grocery store on these corn products, I mean, they're basically giving people money to spend at the government store. That's what it is. It's so ridiculous. But half of all U.S. food is thrown out, so don't ever say we can't feed the hungry. It's because we have government systems that prevent this from happening. Jennifer Aniston, also shit-talking motherhood again. Break silence on pregnancy rumors. I'm not pregnant, I'm fed up. And she goes in saying that it's awful how our media shames her about her body and that she could be fat or pregnant, and how women don't need to have a husband or kids to be happy, and that they're not incomplete or unsuccessful. And it's really awful when the most beautiful thing a woman can do is create life. I'm a creator. I can create lots of things. I built a tabletop for my dresser over there today. I'm building a new set of stairs for the back porch because the stairs broke. It looked like the Mortal Kombat spike pit, and my dog cut her stomach apart on it and needed stitches. But I can build a staircase. Women can create life. There's nothing more amazing and more powerful, but you have these female celebrities, the cultural ambassadors, talking about how awful it is to think a woman should want this, even though statistically it's what makes women most happy, and they do feel complete with a family. The message that girls are not pretty unless they're incredibly thin, that they're not worthy of our attention unless they look like a supermodel or an actress or on the cover of a magazine, is something we're willingly buying into. Yeah, because it's sold to you by women and gay men. Men aren't deciding this. This conditioning is something girls can carry into womanhood. We use celebrity news to perpetuate this dehumanizing view of females, focused solely on one's physical appearance, which tabloids turn into a sporting event of speculation. Is she pregnant? Is she eating too much? Has she let herself go? Is her marriage on the rocks because the camera detects some physical imperfection? Now, how is this dehumanizing to ask if she is pregnant? That's a beautiful thing to be celebrated, but not to Jennifer Aniston. Here's when I come out on this topic. We are complete with or without a mate, with or without a child. We decide for it. See, I don't understand why, if she's an issue with gossip columns and tabloids, that's one thing. But now you're throwing motherhood under the bus. We need to decide for ourselves what is beautiful when it comes to our bodies. We determine our own happily ever after for ourselves. So just say you never want to have kids. Say you think kids are disgusting. And maybe people will stop asking you. Lena Dunham. This moron again. Wants to remove guns from porn ads. And what was going on is there were these porn ads with guns on them, and she was triggered. And that it's not cool to have guns posted on subway ads. Damon himself also spoke about America's gun violence in recent weeks. You guys did it here in one fell swoop, and I wish that could happen in my country. It's such a personal issue for people. We cannot talk about it sensibly. We just can't. Yeah, because you're saying we should just get rid of them all. Moron. Let's see. We got slavery in Romania. Romanian lives matter. Hashtag. Hashtag not all Romanians. 38 detained over slaves, chained up, forced to beg. Authorities in Romania formally detained 38 people on suspicion they took dozens of vulnerable men and boys as slaves and kidnapped them and chained them up and forced them to work or fight each other for entertainment. The investigation involves some 90 suspects who authorities say exploited around 65 people with physical or mental disabilities and who were very poor, making them log wood, beg, or look after animals. Romanian lives. Hashtag Romanian lives don't matter. I did a video on this. The RNC triggered some people. White elevators. Red, white, blue. Red, white, and blue elevators. White elevators. So triggering. Jim Crow, slavery. Don't forget Jim Crow and slavery. Gotta get that white off the flag. White on the flag equals white supremacy, baby. Yeah, watch my whole video on that. More stupid shit. People being triggered over nothing. I mean, how do you live your life if you see the color white? The white crayon. Oh my god. Ban it. Change it. Get it out of my crayon box. Petition Crayola. Oh, what else? Nottinghamshire, which is far too long of a fucking name. But I have a friend who lives there. Wolf whistling to become a hate crime. Police crack down on misogyny. So men can't even attempt to pick up a girl now. That's rape. Hate crime. I mean, think about how hostile this must make trying to, like, this environment. Not the details of it. Oh, wolf whistling. Yeah, well, next it's going to be saying, hey, gorgeous. That will be simply because they are women. During the past 3 months, selected officers and staff have undergone misogyny hate crime training, which includes behavior targeted towards a woman by men, simply because they are a woman. Nonsense. 3,076 hate crime and incidents were reported to police in the UK. The daily rate peaked at 289 offenses. Figures represent an increase of 915 or 42% compared to last year. Yeah, probably because they're making more of these nonsensical laws. Oh, this is, you know, as far as the other food being thrown out. In France, supermarkets told to give unused food to charity or farms. Some of the supermarkets also just set up an aisle where all the food is marked down. And that's one of the things I do. I drink a lot of smoothies, so on my way home from work, I always stop at a little market and I buy all the ripe, marked down fruit, and I just come home, or vegetables, and I'll just either eat it that night or cut it up and save it. Actions, but cut food waste, gains momentum across Europe. Yeah, like I said, they're food waste is supported by Rockefeller Foundation. Oh god. It's always bad when they're behind it, but this seems like a good idea to me. And then we got, we'll end it on this one. This one's an important one. Let me turn this down a little bit. You like this? I would make slow jams all day. I should be producing R&B stuff. Not having to do this, but like I said earlier, we're going to hell in a handbag. I gotta save the world. Otherwise, I'd be making music for people like Justin Timberlake to sing on. Executive Order, United States Policy on Pre- and Post-Strike Measures to Address Civilian Casualties in U.S. Operations Involving Use of Force. And this is just basically them saying, what are we going to do when we have to start keeping a body count of sending our military at civilians? And it says that they'll do a report once a year in May, and that the military will be taking orders from the executive federal government. And I recommend everyone pull up the article. This is from whitehouse.gov, July 1st, and why are we preparing for mass U.S. casualties? One should wonder. But go through the whole thing. It's pretty lengthy, but I'm sure you'll find some of the things interesting. Hope you enjoyed the show. Again, I'll be releasing all the background music as a project called Archives on echoscaperecords.bandcamp.com. Also, I'm going to be putting up a Patreon soon, so hopefully we can get some money together and get Paul, who's going to be our British correspondent, a new laptop so he can be joining us with better video and audio quality. We've been having technical difficulties, but hopefully we'll have a podcast together in the next day or two up for you guys, where we'll be discussing a variety of issues, conspiracy theories, and matters of the occult. And yeah, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter. I have Twitch. Hopefully I'll update that kind of soon. And take care, everyone.